Hey guys, Josh here, and recently I got the chance to play a preview version of Southfield, which is an upcoming, chaotic, physics-based farming sim. The game was originally supposed to release on Steam in early access this June 24th, but the team at Radical Forge decided to give it a bit more time in order to make it the best they could, which I completely support. We don't have any release date at the moment, we'll have to wait a little bit for more updates, but the developers gave me access to a preview version of the game, which I played for about 90 minutes, so in this video I'll be walking you through my experience with Southfield, what I liked and disliked, and hopefully it should give you an idea of what to expect when it releases, and if it's something that could be for you or not. Before we get into it, just remember this is an early build of the game. You will see things that need some work, and I will mention them in order to give feedback to the developers, but we can expect the official release to be more polished. In Southfield, you play as a bud, these soft and wobbly creatures that come out of the ground, and you can customize your bud. You get to select between different body shades and patterns, toppers, which are the little leaves on your head, and there are also different backpacks and outfits to unlock, and you can change all of these things at any time as you play. If you like this channel, I also have a bit of a surprise for you as I got to collaborate with the developers at Radical Forge, and if you redeem the code GardenBud, all in one word, you will get this exclusive Gaming Garden hoodie, which is of course what I wore for most of my time with the game. But before customizing my bud, I first had to get used to the controls, which are quite something. If you've played games like Fall Guys or Human Fall Flat, the physics are similar, so your character is very wobbly. It feels like you're always about to fall over or do something wrong, which adds the chaotic vibe of the game, but it can take some time getting used to. For example, the farming is quite simple in theory. You just till the soil with the hoe, and thankfully you can charge it to till multiple tiles at once, which makes things easier, but there's definitely a feeling of clumsiness to it. You then plant the seeds one by one, and when you water them, it's very quick and efficient, which is nice, but your character is going totally crazy with the watering can, which can feel a bit disorienting at first. When it's time to harvest, you can either grab a crop and just pull on it, which is a little bit time consuming, or you can use your scythe and the crops will go flying and then most likely roll down the hill when they come back down, and you will have to run after them, which is also time consuming. So you can see that they're going for a specific style, putting an emphasis on wacky physics, and they are achieving that well, but depending on what type of player you are, you will either find it funny or frustrating. For me, to be perfectly honest, I like to be fully in control, so I was more on the frustrated side, but keep in mind I also didn't like games like Fall Guys, which a lot of people loved, so it's really just a matter of preference. Besides the quirky farming, another big component of Southfield is crafting and machines. Using a crafting table, you can make machines like a seed maker, a sawmill, or a smoosher, which is basically a fertilizer maker, and different fertilizers will affect your crops in different ways. So I went for the seed maker and I put the first crops I harvested in it, and after a while it violently started throwing out seeds, and I could use those to plant and expand my fields. I also got introduced to conveyor belts, which can give you a bit more control over the things that these machines are throwing out. You can place these belts wherever you'd like, and also you can change their settings, such as their speed, the direction that they roll in, and if they affect players, items, or both, which I think is a really nice feature. You can also add boopers to your conveyor belts, which are little ramps that help things get over gaps or reach higher places. I really like this whole concept of conveyor belts. I love automation in games, but at least with the current build, I struggle to think of a good way to use them. I did place some chests a bit later when I got to the base building. I did not think about going back to the conveyor belts and see if you could have. Maybe items go directly from the belts to a chest. I don't know if that's possible, but that could be one useful scenario. Other than that, though, I was trying to think of other cases, and for now, it seems easier to just put crops directly from your fields to the shipping bin yourself rather than putting them one by one on a conveyor belt. But if later we can have machines that maybe harvest the crops automatically and then put them on a conveyor belt, then the automation could become interesting. With the limited machines and items that we have now, I am failing to see how the automation really integrates with the rest of the game, but maybe that is why they are delaying the release a bit. To craft all of these things, however, one thing you need is, of course, materials. Without tools, you can use the left and right trigger on the controller to slap things like rocks and trees and get resources from them, which feels very satisfying and of course very handy at the beginning or whenever your axe or pickaxe break, which they will do a lot. You can spend money at a shop to increase your tools' durability and strength, which I did, and it does make a difference, but the ones you craft at the beginning will break after every few trees or rocks. And I found it quite frustrating, so I wish the durability at the start was just a little bit higher. While my crops were growing, I decided to explore the world a little bit, and the default running speed is already quite quick, which I love, but what I love even more is that you can roll in this game. It's quick, it actually controls quite nicely, and it makes exploration a lot more enjoyable than just running everywhere. In the full game, there will be some vehicles, so you'll get to travel even faster, but I could not find any in this build. As I explored, I found some treasure chests with decorative items that I could put on my farm or anywhere in the world, and I also find some very unique crops, like these burning fruits, or these ones that made my character dizzy, reversing all of my controls. I think it's a great idea to have crops with different effects, but just like with the automation, I am struggling to see how it will actually be used in the game, and the tutorial didn't really cover these mechanics. That is how I feel for the most of Southfield, lots of fun concepts, but it's not really clear how they will all work together when the game releases. While the starting area was fairly large, I eventually stumbled upon these dark walls, and going over them would deplete my health, which I could replenish by eating some crops, but we will get rid of these walls a bit later. First, I got back to my farm, I sold my crops, and I got started on building my base. If you've played pretty much any game that has base building, you will feel somewhat at home here. You have different pieces like foundation, floors, walls, fences. You can also alternate between different materials, and you can build your base anywhere. Because my tools were breaking a lot, it took me some time, but I eventually did manage to make this little beginning of a house just to test out the mechanics. After placing a structure, you can then edit it and remove small parts of it, for example to create windows on a wall, which I thought was pretty clever. However, because of the lack of precisions in the controls and how everything is a little bit clunky, even if it's on purpose, I found it a bit difficult to select the right parts to remove. Before giving up on my house, I put a little storage chest in it, but the inventory being quite big in this game actually did not need the chest in my short time playing, which is great. This brings me, however, to one little problem I had with the inventory. Once again, it had to do with the controls, so I was playing with a Nintendo Switch Pro controller. I don't know if it's an issue with these specific controllers, but to move within the inventory, I had to push the stick to its maximum in one direction just to move one square, instead of just moving it gently like you would in most games. It might not sound like a big deal, but it made navigating the menus a bit frustrating, and it felt like it was not responding at times, but I just wasn't pushing hard enough on the stick. When using the mouse, the menus worked perfectly fine, but I found the rest of the game worked better with a controller. The developers are recommending a controller as well, so I often found myself switching between the two input methods. The last thing I did in this preview version of Southfield was a quest asking me to speak to the entity by their ruins. I had no idea where that entity was, so it took me a while, but once I got close enough to it, it appeared on my radar at the top of the screen. Only when I got pretty close though, so it was not the most helpful indicator. The entity asked me for 3,500 pebbles, which is the currency you get for selling stuff. So I went back home, sold some more things, came back, and I gave the pebbles to the entity. It then removed one of the dark walls and opened up a new region to explore, where I could find things like new resources, more treasures, and shopkeepers selling new seeds and so on. And that is kind of the gist of Southfield. I appreciate how the game is trying new things. A chaotic farming sim with silly physics is not something I've seen before, but as I said a few times throughout this video, it is a bit hard for me to see how all of these different mechanics will work together, like the crazy physics, the automation, the crops with special effects, the base building. They're all fun, but they feel like pieces from different puzzles that don't connect to each other, if that makes sense. Like, you could remove the automation, or remove the base building, or remove the physics, and while in most games removing a core feature would break the game, I feel like here it would not be that noticeable. So I hope to see these features being reworked a bit to make them more impactful and work with each other, but keep in mind it is an early build, so they are still working on a lot of these things. I should also specify that this game will support multiplayer, so who knows, maybe when you're playing with friends, the experience will feel different. Other than that, the game has a fun, quirky, and chaotic vibe that I think can appeal to a lot of people, so let me know what you think. Will you be playing Southfield when it comes out in early access? If you do, don't forget to redeem your Gaming Garden hoodie. Let me know in the comments how you feel about this game, leave a like and subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you all in the next video.